Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Terra Infinita map from Nos Confunden. Hello and welcome back. It's been a long while even for this series. My recent welcome back to the channel has been made for the World Beyond the Ice Walls series, but now it's time to go back to the world of Nos Confunden. So for those that are very confused by this and have never seen this again, or for those where it's been too much time since we've done an episode on this and they kind of forgot what this is the map made by Nos Confunden. He is Latin American or Spanish, anyway he writes in Spanish and he's a writer, is a creator, and he also makes YouTube videos, so he's mainly a YouTuber, but he also wrote a book, and the book is about the travels outside of the Beyond the Ice Walls, but mainly about the map of Nos Confunden, aka the Terra Infinita map. So this map is not like many others. As you can see, we have this kind of like galaxy-like aesthetic to it, but if you go very into it, zoom into it, you can see that it actually starts with our Earth. So what you'll notice with this map is the fact that it's huge. It's 15,000 pixels per 15,000 pixels. That is an insane amount of space for a map to require. In fact, this map doesn't only show the plane of Earth or the ice walls and the areas inside of them, but it shows the entirety of the galaxy or the known universe, as is shown on the map. We have of course the unknown zones, so areas we don't really know much about, but despite that we have been discovering part of it episode by episode. And basically this is mainly what the series is about. We go into places that are made on the Nos Confunden map, we look at them and we try analyzing through the knowledges we already have and the knowledges we can discover, mainly related to mythology. In fact, this map tends to have big connections to the mythology of the old gods and the ancients of Earth, such places like the land of the custodians, the lands of Tyr for Norse mythology, we have the second Earth, lands of clones, we have Quaoar, we have Nimhai, we have the Nibiru, so the like ancient Assyrian gods, ancient Babylonian gods, then we have places like in ancient Greek mythology, and so on and so forth. And that also explains what this map is about. So now that we got the basis into it, let's start digging about what we've already done. For this map, as you can see by here, we have discovered a big portion of the map. The parts that are in red are the ones that we already talked about in the previous videos. As you can see, almost 2/3 of the map have been talked about, maybe even more, and the majority of the planes of existence have been already discovered and debated. But now comes the part that I fear the most. There's less and less information I can find on the remaining planes of existence, so I have to dig even further to find it, and sometimes I don't even find it at all. So you have to excuse me if in the next episodes and even parts of this one I will not be able to rely much information about these planes of existence, except for the ones that we already see on the map or very light information I find online on them. That said, we're going to move once again on the east of the map. We have been making mainly a circular motion. We start like this and start going like this, and then we went all the way here. Now we're taking part by part. This part's in the eastern corner of the map, and it's finally time to talk about this area here, the one we were very close to in the last episode, when we talked about Lacertus lands, lands of Hydra, and much more. So now that that's done, let's start talking about today's topic. First of all, let's get back into the map itself. Now, one thing you can see immediately from the map is the fact that there's many planes of existence. These can be inhabited, uninhabited, have no information on them, or have many informations on them, depending on which one they are. They can be of any size, from the smallest ones resembling Earth or the core of Earth, or the bigger ones being as big as an entire galaxy. We also have parts that connect these planes of existence, so there's materials, or well, material is not really the right word, but there's states of existence that connect the different planes of existence. So as you can see, this light blue is kind of ice, this like darker blue is water, and this dark blue matter can either be a very dense type of fluid, or it can be completely dark matter, like when we see the ones in complete black, like here. That said, last time we did Skade, and now it's time to go further east. it's time to talk about the lands of the Forgotten Humans. Now, this is a topic I didn't find much information on, but it's still very interesting to debate because the meaning of this could be extremely varied. The lands of the Forgotten Humans are a single creation plane of existence. That means there are no ice walls that divide parts of it from other parts of it. It's only divided from the rest of the universe through the entirety of the ice walls that surround it, but without any ice walls in the inside of it. Now we can see that it has a star, so it already has a source of light. And we can see that there's multiple continents, and we can see that there's water in it. So this plane of existence is clearly livable. The green kind of texture that we can see when zooming in the planet clearly says that there's some sort of flora here, which means oxygen, which means of course that this is in fact a habitable plane of existence. So what exactly is the lands of the Forgotten Humans? So first of all, we have to notice that it mentions lands and not a singular land. This does not mean to say that there's multiple lands inside of the land itself, or there's lands that are outside of this circle that are to be comprehended in this, but no, it just means there's multiple continents that are inhabited. These Forgotten Humans, which I'm just noticing that the Forgotten is spelled wrong in this map, which is kind of hilarious, but we can kind of excuse it because the maker of the map is in fact a Spanish speaker and a Spanish writer. It is not an English speaker. I assume it's not very proficient in the language. So Forgotten Humans, what does this mean? Basically, this is relating to the concept that we saw already with the lands of the clones. Sometimes spatial distortion generators, usually powered by the things we see in the map called nucleuses, such as the Nucleus 282, or even above we can find the Nucleus 276, are created in the galaxy. When these are created, there are distortions in space and time, which mean that they can create some sort of wormhole that make things that are parts of one plane of existence appear in one other plane of existence, without having to forgo major travel. We already saw something like this in the case of the lands of the clones, or well, the lands of the clones in the Second Earth, where there would be multiple humans here that were basically living an alter ego life of the ones on Earth, where they would be having their own continents and their own lands inside of the ice walls and outside of the ice walls, but it was like all a commanded experiment, where there was an upper class that was kind of experimenting on this to be placed on the real humans of Earth once this plane of existence had a good result. So that was wild, but you can see the video for it in the description. But basically, the land of the Forgotten Humans kind of picks back on this topic. In this case, it's the humans that were forgotten by time. So all of those humans that managed to go out of the Earth and the ice walls and were brought here through a spatial distortion generator and that never managed to go back. They are forgotten because there is no trace of them. There's no burial sites, there's no graves. There's no way to actually identify who they exactly were. We can only say that they were forgotten or they were lost. We might have some sources about them on history books or documents or historical texts, but we can't actually find their place of rest. Or if they're living, then we can't find them now. It's even for those that are completely disappeared. There's been many cases of people completely disappearing, and some think something awful has happened to them, but sometimes it just is this, the lands of the Forgotten Humans. That's where they go. So it's an interesting topic, but without much information to dwell on because the ones that are already available kind of mix up with the land of the clones, it's not too much important to kind of like deep dive into. So I'm gonna stop right here. If you guys have any more information on the lands of the Forgotten Humans, feel free to tell me and also write it in the comments so I can know myself. Now let's move north, and specifically northwest. We already did Skare in the last episode, so now it's time to concentrate on this part that is in the middle between Skare and the lands of the Forgotten Humans. Although this plane of existence is very small compared to its neighbors, it has a very interesting history and a topic that I wanted to discuss, especially since I found a very big amount of information online on it. So, this plane of existence is called Tsao Fu. First of all, we can see that the size being very small doesn't mean that it's very much different to the ones that are neighboring. While it is not an icy world that is inhospitable to life like Skare, this is much like the lands of the Forgotten Humans, although it does not appear to have stable oceans, which is a big indicator that this is different from Earth. In fact, this kind of light blue green color that we can see in this map is more characteristic of an ozone layer, or seas of ozone, or sometimes of hydrogen, but not of the seas made by water molecules as we can see in the borders of this map, in the lands of the Forgotten Humans. This means that Tsao Fu is not made to be lived by normal humans, only a special type of human can live here, some that have ascended from the normal ones that we know. So let's actually talk about this plane of existence outside of the actual geography of it. Tsao Fu is not a random name, it has a correlation with something that we can see in mythology, and I think for the first time we are going to deep dive into the Chinese kind of mythology. In fact, as I mentioned, this map uses a lot of types of mythology, often ancient Greek, ancient Sumerian, ancient Norse, and even Hinduist religion, but now we can even see some references to Chinese religion, once again connecting all of these planes of existence outside of Earth to the one inside of Earth. So Tsao Fu is the name of an actual character from Chinese history. Tsao Fu, also called Zhao Fu, was an exceptionally skilled charioteer who is said to have lived over 1000 years before the birth of Christ. He was part of the royal family of the Ying dynasty in ancient China, and his tale is connected to the stars, so once again a connection to the planes of existence beyond the as-walls. In fact, his story starts with an old Chinese king, Mu of Zhou, Zhou being one of the ancestral Chinese monarchies that existed in the first millennia BCE. This king was not satisfied with his terrestrial domain, and had always wanted to visit the land of the stars, or what we'd call the other planes of existence, or even paradise. Through this journey outside of the Earth, he wanted to reach immortality, as he was convinced that human mortality was inherently caused by the process of eating and digesting, and finally aging. And by getting rid of that, through what he called the peaches of immortality, he could become akin to a god. So this is the main story that we're seeing in the land of Tsao Fu. We are seeing a story that relates to a Chinese king that lived over 3000 years ago in the beginning of Chinese history and that desired immortality. As we've seen, these are not completely random things. We have seen gods emerge from the distant past, and we have seen some of meticulous entities that we can even call aliens or other creatures, maybe even spiritual, exist outside of our plane of existence, especially when they are connected to ours. Back to the story of Tsao Fu, this king employed Tsao Fu, the greatest charioteer in the entire kingdom, to reach his objective, so visiting the stars. And so Tsao Fu used his chariot to transport the old king into the heavens and outside of the earthly plane, letting him, according to legend, achieve immortality. And Tsao Fu, the charioteer, was rewarded by letting him ascend to the stars as well. Both he and his 8 horses left Earth forever and were never seen again. Once again, this connects both with the lands of the Forgotten Humans, but also with Tsao Fu itself. In fact, by seeing the circumstance of it, we can kind of judge what this myth is actually referring to in the context of Nos Confunden map. In fact, I would say that Tsao Fu is the physical representation of the achievement of the charioteer Tsao Fu. By managing to achieve immortality along his lord, he achieved an external plane of existence that was outside of Earth. His chariot could have been some sort of device, it could have been some sort of ancient, super advanced machine, some sort of spaceship, but in the ancient times, a chariot would just mean a means of transportation, so it could have any other shape. It could even have some jet fuel, we don't even know about it, but the thing is, somehow Tsao Fu managed to escape our plane of existence and achieve his journey to the stars. By escaping death through this journey, he achieved a natural state further than normal human beings, being able to live in this inhospitable because of the absence of water, but still livable land of Tsao Fu. Although we can't know if this actually meant reaching full immortality, which means that he would be able to live forever instead of just not being able to age, then we don't really know what happened to him. But the simple presence of Tsao Fu in this map means that he is not one of the Forgotten Humans that instead are residing in the plane of existence just on the right of the map. Now that we've finished talking about Tsao Fu, we can move north. In fact, we can see both planes of existence of both Ficaras here and Eri right here. These don't really have any information on them online, so for once we can see Eri here, being a 4-continent plane of existence without ice walls, and part of its major outside barrier is kind of fused with this kind of matter, so we don't really know how connected to the rest of the universe it is, or if this actually facilitates this connection. And once again, we can see that its geography is similar to the one of Tsao Fu, so we can see that it doesn't really have any water, and it doesn't really have either some type of like major source of life, although we have some sort of resemblance of flora here by this green color, and they do have a light source, so there might be life on it, although I'm not sure. On the case of Ficares, it's a barren planet, ice, completely covered in ice, and completely inhospitable. This is probably uninhabited despite the source of light. Probably too little to actually manage to create life. Both of these didn't really have any information online, so feel free to correct me or just mainly inform me about these, because really I couldn't find anything except for... Actually, for these I really didn't find anything, like nothing, completely zero. So yeah, every time I search Ficares, some stuff about medical transport started showing up, so yeah, I don't really know what these are about. And then we go to Nucleus 282. So interesting, this Nucleus seems to be different from the ones that we've seen recently, as Nucleuses can usually be inhospitable places. We saw with Nucleus 294 that it was in fact barren and it was only alive an energy source to create the spatial distortion generators. Then we saw with the Nucleus, where was it, 284, that although it was kind of like more hospitable, still very much covered by this kind of ice layer in the borders of it, so it wasn't really accessible in any sort. But when it comes to the Nucleus we're looking at right now, Nucleus 282, it's interesting because first of all we can see that its light source is right in the middle of it, or almost in the middle of it, which means that it has a good amount of light to make life survive. Also, it has 2 continents, at least it appears so, and these continents both seem to have grass on it, or at least, you know, flora, which means it's probably inhabited by some sort of species, although I can't know if it's sapient or not. Anyways, Nucleus 282 seems to be also connected through this narrow gateway to the rest of this kind of bluish matter, and I don't really know what that means, but it could mean that the energy propelled from Nucleus 282 into the other places that we mentioned in the episode before this and this one is basically more given energy, so it might be more able to sustain life. I'm not really sure. As we've seen, there's many theories about these, and it goes all the way into Dube, and we did this like a few episodes ago, and at this point I really remember what it was really about. So now that we covered these 3, it's time to go to the last topic of this video, which is Ki, or Chich. Okay, so first, before we actually like get into it, I honestly think this is like a spelling mistake, or if it's not a spelling mistake, it's more like a translation error. I think this is mainly referring to Ki as the concept of Chinese philosophy and spirituality. The name Sich doesn't really mean anything, and I've already seen a couple errors on this map when it comes to the spelling. Once again, the maker is not English born, he's not a English born speaker, neither am I, so errors can happen. And the only information that I can find on Sich, if it was in this spelling, would be the galaxy of Gamma Cassiopeia or Gamma Cassiopeiae, and even if it is this one, I don't think it's meant to represent this. So after we talked about this, then let's get into the geography of Sich, or as I will call it from now on, Ki. So Ki is one of the most large and diverse planes of existence in the eastern part of the Nos Confunden map. We can see that it has 2 main continents inside of the ice walls, and then more ice walls, and then more continents, and then more ice walls, and then more continents, and then more ice walls, and then more continents, and finally more ice walls. I don't even know if there's a single plane of existence that we've seen that is so convoluted. Even places like the lands of Hydra kind of go that way, but not that much. And just like looking at it, I don't think there's a single one that is this bad in terms of the like ice walls. So this is a very divided plane of existence. But the thing is, although it's very much divided, it has some sort of what would I call it? Some sort of like stableness to it. Okay, it's not something that is chaotic. It actually looks kind of like a whirlwind, like it's supposed to be this way. These kind of geography like characteristics, I think, merge pretty well with the concept that Ki is supposed to represent. So let's get into the lore of what I found about Ki. But wait, before we get there, I want to mention that there's one source of light for every ring, if I'm not wrong, and this seems to be basically the same amount of light for each of them, except for the last one, and the last one is also the largest one. So once again, there's some sort of like correlation and just very much stableness to it. So Ki is part of the galaxy of Gamma Cassiopeiae, and the main body of light of it was also called Navi, after the American astronaut Virgil Ivan Gus Grissom, who called it Navi because it was his own middle name, being Ivan, spelled backwards. Just a fun fact I found, not really related to anything, but I found it interesting that this source of light is called Navi, which, if anybody of you watched Avatar, the movie, I think Navi is the name of the, like, blue aliens in that movie? Whatever. So, once again, I think this is related to Chinese philosophy and mythology, mainly because of the fact that we already seen a theme with Tsao Fu of this happening, so I think it makes sense for this to continue into Ki. And Ki is represented as life force as its base. So that is what Ki means in Chinese philosophy. The ancient Chinese believed the essence of Ki flowed through everything and united every physical and spiritual being together. It could also mean breath, as the famous Chinese philosopher Confucius said. Therefore, it's a vital energy, and the map actually resembles some sort of yin and yang. Why does this connect to Ki? Because yin and yang are the greatest types of Ki, and this is said and written by the wise ancient text Zhuangzi, one of the two foundational texts of Taoism, the major Chinese religion. But also kind of philosophy. It's a bit complicated when it comes to Oriental philosophy and religion. That said, this is kind of where Ki is going. I think this is a plane of existence where there isn't like life forms as we intended, it's more of a spiritual place where souls inhabit it, and the energy of life itself is the main contributor to the essence of this place. This means that the continents don't really have any like actual life forms in the physical sense, but there are spiritual life forms that inhabit the entirety of these continents, and all of them had different like characteristics and uses and objectives in their own existence. And the sources of light are big depending on the size of the actual plane of the actual area inside or outside of the ice walls, to resemble this kind of balance between the yin and the yang and the concept of Ki. Okay, and with that I finished Ki. Now, before we finish the episode, I want to talk about a bit of this, the Islas de Punizione. Okay, so this caught my eye because, as you might or might not know, judging by my channel name, I do in fact speak Italian. And Islas de Punizione literally is a mixture of Italian and Spanish. And this is particularly interesting because I've never seen Italian ever on this map yet, so to just find it randomly here was pretty interesting, to say the least. And Islas de Punizione made me think of some biblical remembering, some biblical kind of reference, maybe to the Divine Comedy of Dante, which was a Renaissance writer, actually probably even earlier in the Renaissance, so medieval writer, which wrote this like very religious kind of text, which was kind of a play, or well, not really a play, it was a whole deal. If you don't know about the Divine Comedy, I really recommend you look it up because it's very interesting. But basically, the Islas de Punizione might be some sort of like actual hell in the Christian sense, and the existence of Islas de Punizione, which by the way, in case you don't know, really translates to the lands of punishment, might have a correlation with the biblical hell. And I say this because if I am not mistaken, we have seen some references to the Bible inside of this map, mainly in our own plane of existence. And we have Amen, which, okay, but also we have the Ancestral Republic, the Ark of Noah right here, if we can even zoom into it, and Renacer, this is barely readable, but it says Eden lands, or Eden Islands. So you see the place where the angels come from. And somewhere here, I don't really remember where, but there was something called the Homeland of the Angels. Anyways, I think this mainly covers what I wanted to see for this episode. So with that, I think I finished what I wanted to cover on this episode. We looked at the lands of the Forgotten Humans, despite the little information that there was on it. We found more about Tsao Fu. We talked about these 3 places, and of course Key and the Islas de Punizione. With that said, I think this episode is done, and here comes the ritual of putting red on the parts we talked about today. So we have to include the lands of the Forgotten Humans, these 3 places, and all the way to the Islas de Punizione, and make a really big, well, insertion here, I guess, to unite the ones we talked about today. Unfortunately, I don't have anything about these, so we might as well include them. Skinner, Babcock, these talk mainly about stars and galaxies, and there's not really many informations on them, so I think we can count them as covered, despite not really talking about them much. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and, well, write a comment to support the channel so the algorithm spreads the video, put a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and we'll see each other next time.